Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Integrity Racing Show. I'm your host, Todd Thomas. I'm joined tonight by League Administrator and owner Jacob Fife, and then we also have member of the Integrity Racing League, Nick Ward, is going to be joining us as our guest tonight. So, really quickly, we're going to start with, as we usually do, with a look back at the race at Charlotte this past Monday, where Andrew Fayash gets another victory and takes a good 200-mile race at Charlotte. So as we look at the results here from Charlotte this past Monday night, Andrew Fayash with a 15-second lead over Matt Bontempi in a race that saw the last 98 laps of the race go green, 8 cautions for 32 laps. But we finished up with a 98-lap green flag run, which allowed Andrew Fayash to jump out there to about a 15-second win. A lot of different strategies. Jacob, you were somebody that was towards the front. That last 100 laps, a lot of different pit strategy, comers and goers, people getting penalties entering pit road, accidents entering pit road. So, kind of talk us what you saw in that last 100 laps when we had a lot of green flag racing.
Yeah, it was definitely good to see the last 100 laps of the race go green flag the last half. I think most everyone had two green flag pit stops they had to go through, so I was happy to see that. I know a couple guys like Duel and Heichman from 2 to green went one stop, meaning they went basically 60 laps on their tank of fuel to finish out the race. Todd, I think you were on the same strategy. You were leading, I think, with 8 or 9 laps to go, somewhere in there, and almost pulled it off, but had a good race as far as overall. I'd like to see, as a league admin, I'd like to see the front half of the race a little more like the last half, but you can't have it all. But overall, I think, like I said, it's progress. I know we've had a couple rough patches the past couple weeks. Hopefully, this is leading to the right direction with the last half of Charlotte, and that's something we can kind of work and use for Pocono as we head there later.
All right, and Nick, your team with a strong run. We're kind of used to seeing you guys put together good runs there with a 1-2-5-10 finish for your team. Matt Bontempi, a second-place finish is a good result for him. You kind of came in 5th. You were up towards the front racing against your teammates, but also having to factor in what other guys were doing as far as pit strategy-wise. Kind of talk us through your race and how the last 100 laps shook out for you.
I mean, for the team, the race was really good overall, but like for me myself, the race went pretty good the first 100 laps or so, and then when we did get that 98 100-lap run to finish the race, I had to try and change my lineup about 20 laps into the first run and ended up hitting the wall, so that kind of threw me for a curve, and then I killed my own self and was lucky to finish top 10 getting onto pit road under green. I misjudged my pit road entry. I had Colton in front of me coming onto pit road, and I thought I had enough room, and I kind of went for my all-star format or the way I came onto pit road for all-star, and just mistimed it and slammed into Colton and kind of struggled the rest of the race with the nose of the car being torn up.
All right, so really quickly, let's run through the results again. As I'm actually looking at the wrong screen here. Sorry about this, guys. We're going to close that out because that's not the right screen. But a good race with the final 100 laps being green. Jacob, you kind of hinted at this earlier that the first 100 laps weren't as green. We had a lot of cautions, 8 cautions in the first 102 laps. What would you attribute that to as an administrator? I know you watched a lot of the race afterwards. Is that just over-aggressive driving in a 300-mile race in the first 100 miles or so? Or what did you see when you look back through the race as far as maybe some of the problems we might have had in that first 100 laps?
Yeah, I mean, I think over-aggressiveness is one for sure. I think half of us were actually happy we had a set we could actually do something with. I know the past, or at least a few weeks in the past, have been a little iffy, needless to say. But, I mean, it's over-aggressive. I made the same mistake. I was one of the cautions, so I got to take a little bit of the blame myself. Actually, Nick and I were racing for the lead, and just, you're trying to get that lap lead, you're trying to get that extra bonus point for leading a lap, which is not something I've done much this year. And just, you're on that razor's edge, and, when when you're like that, you just sometimes you step over that edge, and it kind of jumped out from under me, and luckily I got lucky and kind of split Nick, and I think Andrew was behind me at the time, and was able to just spin her down in the grass and kind of salvage a finish from there. But I mean, you got everybody grouped up together in one pack, and everybody's competitive. But we just, as hard as it is to do, sometimes you just have to preach patience and really, um, and really hone in on that. And sometimes the league owner needs to listen to his own advice, I guess. But I mean, so hopefully, like I said, we'll move on to Pocono here this week, and we'll kind of build on it. But I think, like I said, as a whole, over aggressive driving, I think you saw that definitely in some spots, to where it's not that early in the race is not really needed.
All right, so we'll go quickly. I've got the standings up there, the results from Monday night. Again, we'll quickly scroll through there. We've kind of talked about the top five. Good run for Alan Fajar to get a third place finish, give him a good bit of points. Adam de Blasio, a strong run, kind of underneath the radar, kind of coasted around there to fourth place with a decent pit strategy. Jay Heisman, as you talked about earlier, with a one-stop strategy down towards the end. Talking to Jay after the race, he felt like that really kind of gave him about 4 spots. Finishing wise, so a good finish for Jay to get him another good points night. Mark Robertson with a quality finish for Mark in 7th place, so we're really excited for him. We talked about my strategy, tried to once stop it, wasn't paying too much attention to the fuel. Had a spotter telling me that he thought I was going to be fine on fuel. Turns out I was about 3 laps short, so I had to coast home in 8th, but I was impressed with the run that I had, able to lead some laps based on that strategy, so a good run. Michael Dolan 9th, and then Kent Weatherall rounds out our top 10. So a good race for a lot of drivers. I think anytime we can have those types of races where we have some green flag racing, some pit stops where we can play different pit strategies, are also always going to be a positive. So, Nick, you're somebody that's kind of in the same boat that I was. You're without a win so far this year, and it was clear to me, at least, sitting back there running in second with 60 laps to go, that Fash had jumped out by about 3 seconds. So I said, the only way I'm going to win this race is trying to do something different. Did that thought process enter your mind about trying to steal a win, or how do you attack situations like that personally?
Well, I feel like with myself, the team, or lockdown, we were talking between me, Fash, and Matt, and we saw you and a couple others were trying to one-stop it, and I think the team in general, like, we have a different way of going about things with pitch strategy. Fayash kind of made this thing. I don't know if he's really talked about it much or if he wants much of it out there, but we kind of have this thing that we use to kind of pick out what pit stops are good. So it works for us, and that's kind of what we stick by. That we might vary it lap by lap, like maybe pit a couple laps earlier, a couple laps later, just kind of depending on what other people do. But then sometimes we end up the first ones on pit road. So usually that kind of factors what we do. But then again, sometimes you just got to make on-the-fly decisions. I was very tempted when I saw you going farther myself to stay out another 5 or 10 laps. That way I could have fresher tires. But I kind of just went with what everybody else was doing. And I think in the long run it might have helped me, but at the same time, you never know what you could have done if you stayed out a few more laps.
All right, so it was an interesting race. We did have some cautions that increased the caution count, so a few drivers were impacted that. We had a new rule this week going into the race with the voice chat rules, and Jacob, as a league administrator, I think we had some naughty boys and girls that we're going to have to put a little coal in their stocking. So we're going to hand the floor over to you and give us the administrative endpoint for that wraps up the week in Michigan.
Yeah, busy. I got my handy-dandy notebook again this week. All right, so basically a couple things. One, so I can remember, first of all, is I don't know if you noticed in the standings, but you saw a -4 next to Bajari's name. That was because his live stream told on him, and on the his lap 131 pit stop, he exited the pits in the middle of 1 and 2 instead of the backstretch. So that puts him to the end of the lead lap. So those points are adjusted accordingly. He was -4, and then the guys who were in the lead lap behind him got an extra point and kind of moved that around. Now on to the slightly bigger things. Michael Dool is suspended 1 race for the caution rule. That was just he got cautions 2 and 3 at Charlotte, so he'll be off for Pocono when we head there, and then he'll be back with us after that. By the way, look at the caution count if you have the chance. You got a couple people with 2 cautions, a couple more at 1. Yours truly. So take a look at that. Also, as Todd mentioned, we have a couple people who had an issue with the race chat. So Drew Carroll will be suspended for next week's race for his race chat issues, and then John Hathaway will be suspended for race chat issues. On top of that, excuse me, Hathaway had a second time he had an issue with an Alt F4. According to the league rule book, and this is one of these issues where you might want to read the rule book, as I know most of you don't. Your second Alt F4 penalty subsequently lands you in being banned from the league. So that's the deal with that. He's no longer going to be with us because of that rule. So that's pretty big. And then with Drew, there was an incident, I believe it was lap 56, and he's being put on probation for 12 races due to lack of car control. This particular probation has been brought down by the new Drivers' Council. This is something they brought up and looked at the replays and looked through a couple other things. And basically what this probation means is that if he has another issue, whether it be of the racing chat or an intentional wrecking or something out of the ordinary, basically, then further penalties may come with suspensions and or banning from the league. So busy week coming from Charlotte, even though, as I said, the last half of the race was really well with the green flag. There are some issues we're trying to address as we move forward, and hopefully as we go forward into Pocono in the next few weeks, things will start to get cleaned up and the racing will start to get back to what we're used to.
All right, so you mentioned the Drivers' Council had some input into the Drew Carroll situation there at lap, I think you said 56. I wonder if you can go into detail about how that process works for drivers in the league, since this is new to a lot of us. Is that something where the Drivers' Council gets together, talks about it amongst themselves, and then they come to you with a unified voice, or is that something where the admins say, hey, we have some questions, what do you guys think? Who initiates that process? Is it dictated who initiates that process? I'm not asking for maybe this particular instance, but in these situations, what can we expect as drivers when something like that does occur with us?
Yeah, basically what the council does is they are basically their own entity. They come up with the issues that they see on the track. When the admins came up with this, we agreed that we would not interject in terms of personal opinion or thoughts or issues we saw necessarily into the Drivers' Council, but the Drivers' Council has the ability to say, hey, this is what we saw, this is what we agreed upon, and this is what we recommend for this situation. That's basically what happened with Drew's situation. The only time the admins or myself really interject is if they have a rules-related question, or if they have, if they need a replay cut or something like that, then we will provide, either context to the rule, or we'll provide, that information, that factual information, so they can come to a consensus. But as far as there's no intermingling. As a matter of fact, the only one who's privy to their chat other than themselves is me, and I've already stated, because they've had the same questions too, because they're trying to figure out what their parameters are, and it's not my job to tell them, hey, we saw A, B, and C. What do you think on this, or what do you want to do? They're going to come to us with things that they see on the track and they feel is hindering the overall racing, if you will, and they're going to come to us and say, hey, look, we saw this, we feel it needs to be addressed, and this is, this is how we think you should handle it.
All right, and one final question before we moved on to other subjects. If we're just an ordinary driver in the league, other than hosting this show, I'm not an admin. I'm not on the. I know it's anonymous, but I'm one of the drivers that's not on the drivers' council. Since the drivers' council is anonymous, if we as a driver have something that we say, I just want to get the drivers' council input, or I want to ask the drivers' council a question, is there a mechanism for that? Could we maybe see one of those in the future, or is the only outlet right now to address it to a league admin and then let the admins take it from there?
At the moment, there's really no outlet to really send anything to them, because once again, it goes back to, okay, we want to make sure that the drivers' council is anonymous, so you can't really send anything to the drivers' council without knowing who the drivers' council is, and then in turn, you can't send anything to the admins, because then the admins would be interjecting into the drivers' council what they want them to look at. We want, like I said, we want the drivers' council to be its own entity and come up with its own issues. It's very similar to the actual real life drivers' council. The drivers' council in real life is not a part of NASCAR's sanctioning body as in terms of those who make the decisions, right? But they have input into NASCAR suggestions to make it better, right? So it's the same general premise as far as that goes. So like I said, there are drivers, there are good standing drivers within our league who are out on the track with you, who are racing with you, and you have the ability to see things that go on track that maybe myself or one of the other admins might not see, or be able to address maybe in the proper way. But this drivers' council hopefully will set us up so that we can kind of guide drivers in the right direction and help them not only get better, but have the racing overall get better. And that's what one of their main functions is.
All right, so Jake, thanks Jacob for answering a couple of our questions. One of the things that Jacob and I have talked about is maybe in our next off week we're planning on maybe doing a question and answer session. So we're going to look forward to that. So we'll get the word out for that. I think we have an off week coming up in a couple of weeks. So yeah, we're planning to have a question and answer session. So if you're a viewer of the show and you want to ask Jacob as the league owner a question, I think we might try to have another admin or two join us that night. So though, if you have any questions for the league admin, we can go ahead and handle it that night. So we're looking forward to that. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Chase standings. As you see those pop up on your screen, Andrew Fayesh with three wins already on the season, picks up another one at Charlotte on Monday. So jumps out to a pretty good lead there. And then you can see we've got a pretty good battle there with 6 drivers with 1 win. So only 7 drivers with wins throughout the year. Now what's important to remember here, that red line is the Chase cutoff as it currently stands. But what is important to remember is you must attempt at least 14 races to be eligible for the Chase. Matt Booster currently with only 4 races under his belt. We have 12 races left. That means that Matt's going to have to run at least 10 of the next 13 races. 13 races left until the end of the Chase. So Matt's going to have to do 10 of those 13 races if he wants to be eligible. Nick, you're somebody that currently is under that red line with the red line and the Chase cutoff. So you're sitting right on that bubble. After the update, you're actually 2 points behind James for that last spot. What do you think you have to do to try to get yourself into a position where you're going to make the Chase this season?
I think the big thing this year to try and make it to the Chase is I'm going to have to win. I mean, that's all it comes down to is it's been such a rough time this season. Like, we've had the speed and everything. It's just going to come down to win or make as many races as I can, which I plan on running the rest of the season. But it's such a close battle right there. And with the way the league's kind of been going, we've had so many different winners lately that it's just kind of been it gives you hope that you can get a win, but at the same time, like there's been a couple tracks I've thought I've had a good shot at. Atlanta, Charlotte, and Phoenix were just a few of them. Atlanta, I led a bunch of laps and get crashed out. Charlotte, lead a bunch of laps, crash myself out of that, or don't crash out. But for me, it's been a personal struggle of hitting a lot of getting involved in a lot of wrecks and not being able to complete races. So I think if we can just complete races, maybe we can sneak in there. So there are a couple of those guys, James down there. So hopefully maybe we can just sneak on in without getting a win. But the goal overall is just get a win, and hopefully we can make it into the chase.
All right, and as we look here, I've got the overall standings, and what I want to point out there is, Jacob, you're actually the #1 driver right now amongst those of us that don't have a win. So do you as we kind of go back to the chase standings, you're in first place amongst the drivers that don't have a win. So you're currently the #8 driver in the seeding if we were to start the chase today. Is that making you feel a little bit more comfortable, or what do you think you have to do to just to solidify your space a little bit more?
Winning wouldn't hurt. Yeah, I do feel a little bit more comfortable now than, say, a few weeks ago. I think I know I'm definitely more comfortable than Nick is. I was looking at the standings right at the cut line, and I think there's about 5 or 6 drivers within 10 points of each other, and the cut line's right in the middle. So he's going to have some work to do to make sure to stay ahead of some of those guys because they're pretty good. As far as my standing, you just got to go race the races at this point and try to make smart moves and smart decisions to get yourself in the best position each week, and the points will take care of themselves from there. So hopefully we'll keep doing that. I'll keep chipping away at it, and if we get a win, great, because that'll kind of set us up for the first set of races in the chase. But if not, you just got to stay consistent and keep plugging away at it.
All right, and just to hit on that point that Jacob brought up, if you look at the chase standings that we have back on our screen there, if you look at Ty McWhorter at 305 points currently, 4 spots to the clear to make the chase, all the way down to Cody Smith, who's a little ways below the cut line, is only 21 points back of McWhorter. So you have about 8 to 10 drivers stuffed around that cut line, and it's going to be an interesting race to see who can advance and who could make it to the next round of the chase. And so as we kind of transition to the caution count, we kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. We just want to quickly go over the caution count and what you might be looking at there. You can see yellow numbers are numbers of people that obtained at least 1 caution at Charlotte this past Monday night. So William Roberts gets his 2nd caution of the year. That's why he would be in yellow. We talked about Michael Dole. The red there indicates that Michael will be serving a 1-race suspension next week at Pocono. There's a couple other drivers that got charged with a caution. Chris Freeman picks up his first. Cody Smith is first. Alec Majari gets 1. Jacob Fife actually charges himself a caution, and then Drew Carroll gets 1 to move himself up to 2 cautions. So, Jacob, we've had our first driver suspended under the new caution count rule. Do you think that maybe is having an effect, or have you seen some positive change since we've made that rule change?
Yes and no. I'm hoping in time that it will start having an effect. The caution count itself is a slow mechanism to help clean the racing, and it's intentionally done that way. I don't. Nobody wants to suspend people. I mean, I guess I need to say that right off the top. You don't want to have to go out and suspending drivers every week, and they're upset with you because they don't think they cause a caution, and then you're back and forth and doing all this mess. It's too much stress. I don't like doing it. But you have to stay within the confines of the rules as well, and you have to have things in place to make sure that you have clean racing. So, like, as the season goes on, I'm hoping drivers need to become more aware of the caution count and where they're at with it. If I have 1 more caution here the next couple weeks, then I really need to keep in mind, hey, 1 more and I'm sitting out a week, and that might affect where I fall in the chase standings, depending on who else may win. If new people may win, it really comes into play. And I think hopefully as more people are aware of that, the racing will pick up in a good way because of that, because people are kind of forced to drive patiently or with more awareness to who's around them and giving room and doing the things we really need to do. But sometimes as racers we get competitive and kind of lose sight of the bigger picture.
All right, and Nick, you're somebody like me who's been pinned on two cautions for a couple of weeks now since the change has happened. I know personally, my thought process is, well, Sonoma's coming up. I'm not good at Sonoma. Like, maybe a caution here before Sonoma wouldn't be such a bad thing. Has that entered your mind at all, or is that just something you say, you know what, you can't control it, just drive the car the best I can, and maybe I avoid that suspension entirely?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. As much as a suspension for Sonoma doesn't sound like a horrible thing, I tend to be a little bit better on the road courses. So hopefully, maybe that could be the place where I get a win. Would be Sonoma, which would be nice to get it there. Not worry about the rest of the places. But the way I look at it, like you said, I've been charged with two cautions, same as you. Um, my first caution on that count was Kansas on lap two. I spun myself out going into turn three and killed multiple people. I know I killed Jacob in that wreck, a bunch of others, something like 8 cars. And then the following week at Dover, we go out there and a little bit of note code, but more than likely the wreck was still going to be happening, so it was still charged to me. And I don't fault it. I mean, the system's there in place for that reason. Um, coming off the corner, just I thought I was pinched a little bit. I don't really know. And just made slight contact and wrecked myself again at Dover. Um, so most of my cautions have been all, I mean, they've completely been 110% my fault. Like, it's all things I've done myself, whether it be self-spinning or not. So my thing is just don't spin the car out myself. And I've toned down my aggression hopefully enough to where I don't run somebody over and cause another caution. So that's kind of where I'm at. Don't be aggressive and keep the rear end of the car underneath me and not in the outside wall. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
All right, and then kind of the last league update. We haven't touched on the Rookie of the Year standings, the Shane Ashmore Rookie of the Year Cup. We haven't touched on that in a few weeks, so we're going to kind of briefly touch over that. Adam de Blasio maintains his lead. In fact, with the withdrawal of Travis Morgan, actually expands his lead to an 18-point lead over Brendan Burkhoff. Adam, the top finishing rookie again this past Monday night with his fourth place finish. Ty McWhorter in third. Brad Brennan fourth, and then T.J. Thompson. And you can see the rest of the list there with Sam Roush, William Hartman, Kent Weatherall down, and then Brian Terry through the top 10. Brian with the win already this year, so he's going to be locked into the chase whether he gets up there in the Shane Ashmore or not. Nick, you run around these guys, new members to the league. We had a lot of new members that kind of joined us. What have you noticed from some of these new guys? Have you enjoyed racing around them? Who are the ones that you've really been around a lot? You've said, I really like racing against these guys.
Well, I think some of the ones that have been around a lot is the Rookie of the Year points leader there, Adam de Blasio. Some of those guys up there, like de Blasio, Burkhoff, McWhorter, like they're up there in the Rookie of the Year standings because they're up towards the front half of these fields, and more than likely they're up at the top 10, 15 section of these fields. De Blasio, I raced with him over the winter. Great driver, really clean, and manages to just keep his car clean and out of the wreck. So I think de Blasio is going to be one to watch out for. He's leading those standings right now. But then all those guys in the top five they're good. There's nothing to it. They run clean. They run consistent. They might have an issue every once in a while, but who doesn't? I mean, I think that battle for Rookie of the Year is going to be really good. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
All right, and next week we go to Pocono, and Jacob, one of the things that everybody kind of missed until you kind of mentioned it to us after the race on Monday is that Pocono, just the way the league calendar falls, is on Memorial Day. Memorial Day is always a Monday, and this year Pocono would be our Memorial Day holiday. So that you put a poll up on Facebook and got a decent number of responses. Can you kind of tell us when we are officially going to run the Pocono race this coming week?
Yeah, well, we kind of gave it away. It's this coming week. Yeah, we'll race Monday. We'll put the session up. Everything will be as normal. We did have a contingency plan in place to switch the off weeks around. There's a normally scheduled off week, I think in about 2 weeks, that we would have switched around if need be. But Pocono will be Monday night. You'll have your normal 2 sessions of practice, one for those trying to qualify in, and then one for those who are locked in. and then right around 8:50 or so, there'll be a race session, and we'll go racing at Pocono. Should be a lot of fun. Always a different and interesting track to go to, where it has its own unique challenge compared to anywhere else on our schedule. So hopefully we'll have a strong field there and have some great racing.
All right, and one of the great things about the Tricky Triangle is that it's an oval that drives a lot like a road course. Nick, you just talked about it. You're pretty good at Sonoma. You're good at those tracks where maybe you do have to shift. Are you somebody that does do a little bit of shifting at Pocono throughout the run, or are you somebody that puts it in fourth gear and just turns the lap?
Well, I think it's going to depend on the setup. I haven't really gotten any practice with it so far, but like you said, it drives a lot like a road course, and for me, that's a personal strength because especially getting into turn one, if you have a setup where you have to slow down, which I've noticed with this lower downforce package, because I have run some laps, just not enough to really know what I'm going to do. It's a little bit of both, depending on how your tires are in the run and kind of what everybody else is doing around you, and if you want to get away, if you want to try and pull away, get it in third gear, and just kind of take off out of the corner, but if you kind of want to drop back, maybe relax a little bit, let the tires cool down, just leave it in fourth. So it's really situational dependent on what I do personally at Pocono. But nonetheless, I think that should be probably one of the better tracks for me this season. And Todd, you seem to be pretty good. You seem to come out of nowhere. So we'll have to see how you do out there. I'm looking forward to racing with you guys up there and hopefully see you guys up in front.
I think one of the things that's going to fall into my advantage is because Pocono does drive like a road course. It is a track where you can make a green flag stop and not go a lap down. And so that leads to a lot of interesting pit strategies. Drivers like me that say, you know what, I think I kind of showed my cards this past Monday. If I can try to steal one, I'm going to try to do it. So I think for those drivers that kind of enjoy playing different pit strategies, it's definitely a race that if we get some green flag racing, you're going to see some of that. Jacob, I know you normally try to turn a few laps in the set. Have you been able to do that for Pocono to kind of give the drivers that haven't turned a few laps there kind of an idea of what they might be looking at this coming Monday night?
I've done a quick couple, not enough to remember what times I ran, sadly. Basically, it's Pocono as we've seen it the past couple years. Turn one is pretty loose coming off the corner, I feel. Turn two is very quick, and you have to be on the bottom. And I feel you're kind of in a four-wheel drift working through that corner, so it's going to be to kind of steal the pun, the tricky part of the triangle. And then turn three, you really have options, I think. I think you'll see some people going high and using that little patch that was there from the repave a few years ago in real life. And then you might see some people trying to use the bottom and use that as a way to kind of maybe drop a gear and kind of get that extra motor off the corner to maybe complete a pass or something like that. So once again, you know, as Todd mentioned, you'll have different strategies in play with pit stops and how to work that. And because I know those close enough to the leader can make a green flag pit stop and do it without going a lap down and maybe gain an advantage there. And then just within the racing itself, you do have options at least in turn three and to some degree turn one, but it really depends on how you're able to set up a driver in front of you or how you have your car driving at a certain point to how you move around the track. So it should, like I said, it should be unique and interesting, and it's something we certainly look forward to doing twice a year.
All right, so that's going to wrap up our show for this Thursday evening. Thanks for joining us for the Integrity Racing Show. We'll be back next Thursday at 8 o'clock again, where we're going to recap the Pocono race from this coming up Monday, and then we'll look forward to Michigan. So have a great holiday weekend. Take care of your families. Thank a veteran and a service member. But thanks for joining us this Thursday night. We hope to see you again next week. Have a good night, everybody.